Masechet Baba Batra Daf Lamed Bet. Yesterday we saw an interesting case of two people claiming the same piece of land. Each of them has the same claim that it belonged to my ancestors and I have a chazakah. However, the person who is currently on the land only has witnesses that he has a chazakah. He has no witnesses about it belonging to his ancestors. The other guy has witnesses that say both. It belonged to his ancestors and he has a chazakah. And so the Bet Din, based on that, Rav Nachman's ruling was, we remove the current occupant and we give it to the guy who has witnesses for both claims. Now, sometime later, the guy who was kicked off the land gets witnesses that not only did he have a chazakah, but also that it did belong to his ancestors. And so now they have equal claims and equal testimony. Now, if we had that testimony to begin with, then we never would have removed the occupant that we started off the case with. We never would have removed him. And so now the question is, when this new evidence comes in, should we go back to the original and put him back into the land, remove the guy that we put there, and put back the original guy, because we would not have removed him in the first place had we had all the evidence, and therefore we should go back. And we don't care about ziluta de Bet Din, that the people will treat the Bet Din lightly, that they keep going back and forth. And it seems like a fickle Bet Din. We don't worry about that. That was Rav Nachman's position. Now others argue that, no, once you gave it to this other guy, so now leave it in his hands, because we still are in doubt. We still have equal evidence. And so we don't know that it's the first guys any more than the second guys. So leave it status quo. That way people will not come to ridicule the Bet Din. Okay. Now, we challenged Rav Nachman from a couple of sources. Rav challenged him. And Rav Nachman says, you know what, you're right. And we should care about the ridicule of Bet Din and not switch it back. But in the end, he switched it back anyway. And at first we thought maybe it was a mistake. But actually, when he looked into it, he found that he had great authorities to rely on. And in fact, there were Tanaim that said that we do not worry about ridicule of the Bet Din if new evidence comes in. And if we had that evidence when we made the original ruling, then we would have left the guy there. Then, with the new evidence that comes in, we put that guy back. We will switch the verdict based on the new evidence, because if we had the evidence in the first place, then we would have ruled that way. Okay, so now our job is to find the opinions of the Tanaim that say that we will switch back a verdict based on new evidence, even though it might lead to ridicule of the Bet Din. We don't care about the ridicule. We just want to do what's right. And if we would not have kicked this guy off or done whatever verdict we have in the first place, if we had all the evidence up front, then once we have it, we should go back to the whatever we would have said had we had it up front. Okay, so here's the case. Titnan, Mishnah Masechet Ketubot. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, En ma'alin keuna al pi ed echad. Rabbi Yehuda says, we do not raise someone up to be a kohen based on just one witness. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Ematai bimkom sheyesh orerin. Makom she'en orerin, ma'alin keuna al pi ed echad. Rabbi Elazar disagrees with Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says you can never make someone a kohen based on one witness. You need two witnesses. But Rabbi Elazar says, one witness is no good against a protest. Then you cannot bring him up. But if there's no protest, then one witness is sufficient. One witness says, I know this guy. He is a kohen. I know his father was a kohen. Whatever. So when one witness is enough, if there's no protest on the other side. Third opinion, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Hasigan, Ma'alin keuna al pi ed echad. He says we do make someone a kohen based on the testimony of one person who says that yes, he's from a family of kohanim, and so he seems to not say so across the board. And our question is, well, would Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel say this even if there's a protest? What if there's two witnesses that say that he's not a valid kohen? He's a ben gerusha. So would two witnesses obviously of a protest is going to be stronger than one witness. So in what cases does he say that you can use one witness. Must be only if there's no protest. Well, if so, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Hainu Rabbi Elazar. It looks like the last two opinions of Rashbag and Rabbi Elazar are saying the same thing. Both of them think that you can rely on one witness when there's no protest, but you wouldn't rely on one witness if there is a protest of two. Oh, so maybe we'll say that the difference is if there's the protester is just one witness. Rabbi Elazar thinks that one witness protest is a valid protest. So if one witness says he's not a valid Kohen, and one witness says he is a valid Kohen, then we do not make him a Kohen. One witness can only work if there's nobody else, if there's nobody at all protesting. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel savar ad tereh, and Rashbag says a protest is only valid if there are two protesters, two against one, then he's not a Kohen. But if it's only one person protesting, then that's not sufficient. That's not even considered a protest. We throw him out, and we rely on one witness to say that he is a Kohen. If that's the case, that's what they're arguing about, can't be. Rabbi Yochanan says that everyone agrees that a protest has to be at least two witnesses. So therefore, everyone agrees that a protest of one witness is nothing, and that therefore cannot be the difference between Rabbi Elazar and Rashbag. So let's try again. Elad tereh. It must be that they disagree in a case when there are two witnesses that are a protest. Now, wouldn't everybody agree that two witnesses that protest and say he's no good would for sure be stronger than one witness that say he is a Kohen? Okay, but we're not talking about a simple case. We are going to propose a more complex case. כגון דמחזיקינן לבאבו דהי דכהן הוא, ונפק עלי כלה דבן גרושה ובן חלוסה ואחתינה. We have a certain guy, he has a chazakah that from his father that he's a Kohen. That's what we use nowadays. You have a chazakah, your father was a Kohen, your grandfather was a Kohen, right? We see he always got aliyah, he always did Birkat Kohanim, so we could just continue the same presumption as unless there's new evidence. Okay, so he has a chazakah, so right now he's a Kohen. Now, there is a rumor that his father married a gerusha, or his father married a chalutza, and therefore he is a halal, he's an invalid Kohen. Now, this is just a rumor. It's not based on any proof, but he's brought down temporarily. It's not an official verdict of the Beit Din that you're not a Kohen. We're just like, listen, don't do anything, don't eat terumah, or do anything that a Kohen would do until we figure it out. Okay, so the chazakah is now downgraded. Then one witness comes and says he is a valid Kohen, and we elevate him back up. We never really officially degraded him to elevate him. So, okay, now he's back. We have one witness, he's a Kohen. He had the chazakah also. Everything's good. But then two witnesses came and said he's an invalid Kohen. And then the Beit Din made an official verdict and said, you cannot serve as a Kohen, you cannot eat terumah. But then one more witness came and said he is a valid Kohen. We're under the assumption right now, for the purpose of this argument, that everyone agrees that you can combine testimony. We'll see in a minute, there is a machloket about this, whether if you have one witness that says something today, and another witness says the same thing, but he comes tomorrow, can we join together those two single witnesses as a pair and have the force of two witnesses? We're going to assume right now that you can. And therefore, we have two witnesses that say he's an invalid Kohen, and two witnesses that we join together now that say he is a valid Kohen. So the fact that we had the back and forth, it just means that we had a verdict. First, we had one witness. We downgraded him based on a rumor, but that was just temporary. One witness said he's good, so we said he's good. We upgraded him. Two witnesses says no, so we downgraded him. Then one witness says yes. So now is the Beit Din going to flip-flop? Because in the end we have two witnesses yes and two witnesses no, which is a total case of doubt. We really don't know what to do. Now, if we started off, let's say just with the chazakah, we had no problems beforehand, and you have 2 and 2, well then you wouldn't demote him based on 2 and 2 because they just cancel each other out. Who says you should listen to these rather than these? However, in this case, because already he has been demoted based on the two witnesses that came at the same time. So then when one witness comes later, should we then say, well, if we had all the witnesses up front, we would never have demoted him. So therefore now we should bring him back up because that's what we would have done, right? And therefore, and we don't worry about the ziluta de betin, the ridicule of the betin, or do we say, oh, now that we downgraded him, let's leave it as is, and not change it again because we don't want to look like the betin keeps flip flopping. Okay, so that's what we're going to say. That's the essence of the machloket between Rabbi Elazar and Rashbag, whether we worry about the denigration of the court. Rabbi Elazar sabar, kevan de'achtine la masikinan le, chashinan leziluta de bedina. Rabbi Elazar says, since we brought him down when two witnesses came, and that was the verdict, so we are not going to elevate him again, because we are worried that people will ridicule the court, that they keep going this way and then they go that way. This court looks like they don't know what they're doing. And so that's why he says you can rely on one witness only if there is no protest of two witnesses. But if two witnesses come and they give a protest and then one witness comes and joins together with the witness before, then we worry about ridicule of the court. So he would say we don't change, and he's not a kohen. ורבן שמעון גמליאל סבר, אנא נחתינא, ואנא מסכינן לה, ולזילותא דבית דינא לחשינן. Rashbag disagrees and says, we originally brought him down because we had two witnesses that he was no good, but now we have a second witness joining with the first one that he is good, so we have two witnesses that he is good. And if we had known that up front, we never would have brought him down. And therefore, just like we brought him down, now we should bring him up based on this new evidence. And we're not going to worry about ridicule of the betin. And so, back to our original story, Rav Nachman can say, I'm following the Tana, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. I have a strong source authority to rely on, and therefore I will also do the same thing. However, this reading is challenged. Rav Ashi says, if that is what the argument is about whether you worry about ridicule of the betin or not, and we had to come up with this whole situation where there was one witness and then two and then one, well then the same would be true if there was just two witnesses that came and said he's no good and we brought him down, and then two witnesses came and said he's good, and we have the same question if it's about ridicule of the betin. And then you'd have, Rabbi Elazar would say, well, you already brought him down, so therefore leave him down because we care about ridicule. And Rashbag would say, well, two witnesses said he's no good, he brought him down. Two witnesses now come and say he's good. So it's 2 on 2, and if we had 2 on 2 to begin with, we never would have brought him down, and therefore we should bring him back up because we don't worry about ridicule of the betin. So if that was the essence of the argument, then they would not have formulated their argument as they did in that original Mishnah and Ketubot as being about one witness. You don't have to make it a complicated case about one witness because you can show the principle based on two witnesses, and therefore that cannot be a correct reading. Ela amar Rav Ashi, tekula amar lachashinan leziluta de bedina, ulevehacha belisaref aidut kamipalge beflukta dehani tanae. Rather, Rav Ashi says everyone in the Mishnah agrees that we do not worry about the ridicule of the betin. That is Rabbi Elazar and Rashbag. That's not the issue that they're dividing on. And actually, this is even better for Rav Nachman, because now Rav Nachman has not just one Tana, but both Tanaim that we were talking about before agree that we don't worry about the ridicule of the betin. And if we have new evidence, then we will go back and change the verdict. So, what is the argument about? The argument is about whether we join together two witnesses that testify on separate days. And we know that this is a machloket from the following Baraita, the Tanya. L'olam en edutan mistarefet ad shir'u shenehen ke'achad. Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha omer afilu bezeh achar zeh. Okay, this is a separate machloket, not related to our situation. The first opinion here says that witnesses cannot join together unless they see the crime or the occurrence, the financial transaction at the same time. They have to be looking at it at the same time in order to testify together. Whereas Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha says, even if it's one after the other, right? One comes and sees the beginning of an act of someone, stabbing someone, and the other one comes, that he leaves, and the other one comes afterwards and sees the continuation of the act. They can testify together, even though they weren't looking at it at the very exact moment. Okay, the second machloket is what interests us. En edutan mitkayemet bebet din ad sheya'idu shenem ke'achad. Rabbi Natan omer shom'in devarav shel ze hayom veliksheyavo chavero lemachar shom'in devarav. The first opinion says that witnesses cannot testify together, cannot join together unless they are in bet din at the same time testifying together. At the very right, they walk into bet din together. We have testimony, and they offer their testimony together. Then it's valid, but not on different days. Whereas Rabbi Natan says we can listen to one witness today, and then if his friend comes tomorrow, then we listen to his friend's testimony tomorrow, and they can combine to have the force of two witnesses. That is the machloket between the Rabbi Elazar and Rashbag. Rabbi Elazar thinks that because you had one witness that came earlier that said he's a valid kohen, and then two witnesses came together and said he's not valid, and then after that, on a different day, one witness said he is a valid kohen. The first one witness and the last one witness do not join together, and therefore we demoted him, and he stays demoted because there are two witnesses against and only one witness for. Whereas Rashbag says, even though the one witness before and the one witness after came on different days, we do join them together, and therefore we join them together. We have two witnesses that he's not a kohen, two witnesses that he is a valid kohen, and even though we demoted him, we promote him again because we don't worry about the ridicule of the bet din. And even Rabbi Elazar, if the two came together that he's good, then we would promote him. Let's say two witnesses came first and said he's no good, and then two witnesses say he is good, and we demoted him after the first set of witnesses, we would re-promote him because we don't worry about the ridicule of the bet din. And so in conclusion, Rav Nachman actually had both of these Tanaim to support his opinion. We next have another very interesting dispute over land. Tahud amar lechavre, mai ba'it behai ar'a, amar le minach zevinte v'hashetara. Someone comes to his friend and says, what are you doing on this land? This is my land. And the occupant of the land says, I bought it from you and I have a deed of sale. And if he really has a deed, well, then that's 100% proof. Amar le shetara zaifahu. However, the claimant said that this deed is forged. It's a forged document. It's not real. Kachin lachish lerabah. In shetara zaifahu mihu shetara me'aliyah havali ve'irkas. Ve'amina in kitai bidai kol dehu. And the current occupant says, bends down and whispers to Rabbah, who's the judge, and he says, in fact, he's right. This is a forged document. However, I had a real document. My claim is true. And I had an actual real document. It was lost. And I said, well, let me bring something. I don't want to come in empty-handed. So I had someone write up a document just like the one before. It's a very good forgery. And I said, let me bring this with me. So at least I'll have something. So even though he's right, technically, that this document is forged, but nevertheless, my claim to own this land is a true claim. Amar Rabba ma lo leshaker ibai amar le shetara me'aliyahu. Rabba said that is a good argument because why would he lie? If the guy on the land now, if he wanted, he could have said, that's not true, this is a proper document. The forgery was so good that nobody would be able to tell. So he could have claimed that this is a valid document and stayed on the land. Since if he was lying, he could have said that. Therefore, we should believe him, even though it's a forged document, but we should believe him that his claim is true, and he let him stay on the land. Amar le Rav Yosef, amai samacht aha shetara, hai shetara chaspa be'almahu. Rav Yosef disagreed with Rabbah and says, what are you relying on? On this document? This document is as worthless as a shard of earthenware, just a broken piece of clay. You can't You can't give a ruling based on a document that he himself just admitted is a forged document. That's nothing. So he does not have any proof to his claim. Okay, so that machloket remains, and then we're going to bring a second case in financial matters where they have the same argument. Someone comes to his friend and says, give me 100 dinar that I am collecting from that you owe me. And I have a loan document that says you owe me this $100. Amarle shetara zaifahu. The defendant says that document is a forged document. Kachin lachish le'rabah. It should be rabah. In shetara zaifa mihu shetara me'aliyah havali ve'irkas v'amina in kitai bidai kol dehu. And so the defendant here again bends down and whispers to Rabbah, the judge, says, in fact, it's true. This document is a forged document. However, I had a valid loan document and I lost it. And I said, let me bring this something in with my hands. Even if it's not a forged document, let me bring in something. Having something is better than nothing. And my claim is indeed true. He really does owe me 100 dinar. And I really did have a document, so I lost it. Okay, so here's a forgery replacement. Amar Rabbah, ma lo leshaker. Iba'e amar le shetara me'al yahu. Rabbah says here, also, why would he lie? If he wanted, he could have said that this is a proper document. He could have insisted. And it's such a good forgery, nobody would have known the difference, and he would have been able to collect his money. So now that he admitted that it's a forged document, we should also believe him. Amar le Rav Yosef, amai kasamacht, ahai shetara chaspa be'al mahu. However, Rav Yosef says, what are you relying on? This document? This document is just a shard of clay, and you cannot use it as evidence. It's like zero. If he comes into court with zero, so he says, well, he owes me money. That's no proof. We would not award him money. And so having a false document, you can't even base a malo lishaker on it, because it's just not something that is admissible in court, and you cannot collect with it, even if he has a malo lishaker argument. And so we have the same argument between Rabbah and Rav Yosef, once regarding taking back land, and once regarding collecting a debt. Amar Rav Idi bar Avin, Hilcheta kivate de Rabbah be'ar'a, Hilcheta kivate de Rav Yosef bezuzeh. Hilcheta ke Rabbah be'ar'a dehecha dekaima ar'a tekum. Hilcheta kivate de Rav Yosef bezuzeh tehecha dekaimi zuzeh lukmeh. So Rav Idi bar Avin says, I am going to split the difference and say the halacha is like Rabbah if it comes to a case of taking land. But the halacha is like Rav Yosef when it comes to payment of money. Why? The difference. Halacha is like Rabbah when it comes to land, because we're going to leave the land where it is. We follow the status quo. This guy is on the land right now. He claims that he bought it and he once had a valid deed, and he's on the land now. So we'll leave him there and assume that he in fact did have a proper deed. And why would he lie? He could have used this one. And said it was not a forgery, and therefore we leave him there. Whereas in the monetary case, we're going to follow Rav Yosef, but because of the same principle that we leave the money where it is. This guy comes and says, I want you to pay me, and so now he's trying to extract money for the money to change hands. So we're going to leave the money where it is with the defendant. And the defendant says, this is this is a forged document, and indeed it is a forged document. So we're not going to extract money based on a forged document. We're going to leave it as is. And so Rav Idi bar Avin says, I have good reason to follow halacha like Rabbah in land, and like Rav Yosef in regarding money, because of the principle of leave the thing where it is, and the other guy has to prove his point fully if he wants to remove it to change hands. And now we have a last case. He had a guarantor. The guarantor paid someone's loan, the certain borrower. He couldn't pay, and the lender came and said, hey, the borrower's not paying, you pay, and the guarantor paid the loan. But now the guarantor has a right to go back to the borrower and get paid. So he says, give me the 100 zuz that I paid to the lender on your behalf, and I have a document, right, that I got from the lender that says that you still owe the money, you have to pay me. Amar le lav peratich, amar lav hadrat shekaltinhu minai. And so the borrower says, didn't I pay you back already? And the guarantor says, you're right, you did pay me back already, but didn't you take the money back from me again? You borrowed it once again. And so, even though this current document that I brought to court that says you owe me money is a false document because you paid back that loan, but still it's true that you owe me the same amount of money because subsequently you borrowed that same amount again. And so this is similar to the case before. Just like the case before, he has a document that's a forgery and admits it's a forgery, but he could have said it was real, so we believe him. So here also, he's collecting a debt using an old document from the previous loan, and but his claim is true that the guy does owe money, but even though this particular document deed attests to a loan that has already been paid back. So what do we do in this case? The case came to Rav Idi bar Rabin. He's the one that made this compromise halacha, and he wasn't sure what to do, so he sent it to Abaye. Ki hai gavna mai, so what should I do in this case? Shalach le Abaye, maiti ba'eleh le. Ha-ihu da'amad, hilchata kivateh de Rabba be'arav, hilchata kivateh de Rav Yosef bezuzeh, techa deok mezuzeh lukmu. And Rabbaye wrote back to Rav Idi bar Avin, why are you asking a question? You are the one that said yourself that halacha follows Rabba when it comes to land, and halacha follows Rav Yosef when it comes to money. And if we're talking about money, then we leave the money where it is. And this is a case of money, and you're trying to extract money based on a document that is false. In this case, it's not forged, but that document is about a loan that had already been paid back. And you cannot collect money with a false document because you're trying to exchange hands. You're trying to extract money and make it move. And you can't do that unless you have an actual valid document. You yourself answered this question. This is a monetary case, and therefore you cannot make him pay. However, the Gemara just notes that a limitation on what Abaye says. The Abaye is right if it's a case where the guarantor says, you borrowed money from me again. You paid me back, it's true, and we were totally settled. And then you borrowed money from me again subsequently. So that's a new loan, and there is no valid document about that loan, and that's where Abaye is correct, that we would follow Rav Yosef, that there's no valid document here, and he cannot be paid back without any further proof. Aval amar le hadartinhu nihalach mechamat avush shayfe v'sumake hakati ite leshibuda dishtara. However, if we had the same case where the guarantor paid a loan to the lender, and then he wants to come and collect that loan from the original borrower, and the borrower paid money, but that money was no good because the coins were worn out or all rusted, and they were not invalid coins that you would have a lot of difficulty using in the market because they were all worn out. And so the guarantor returned the coins to the borrower, said, these are invalid coins. In that case, the lien on the original document is still in effect. That's not called paying back the loan, and it's like a new loan because he gave back the money. No, in that case, the original loan was never paid back because that money that the borrower gave was not valid money. And in that case, we would make the borrower pay based on this document because it's an original valid document about this very loan. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.